Hello again. So, here we've got some Saunders Waterford. It's £140, 300 grams. I've been using this paper for many years. It's my go-to paper. This kind of suits my style. I may have said in previous videos that my favourite of all papers is Whatman, but that stopped being made quite a few years ago now. And I do jealously guard quite a large stock of that paper that I bring out now and again. So, for those of you who are not familiar with this fantastic Saunders Waterford paper, they also make Bockingford, which is also another great paper, but this one far superior for the type of style of painting that I do. I just want to show you a few things that it can do. So I'm going to start out here with a quick sort of sky wash. Now, the things with any watercolour paper, the most important thing is to know what it can and can't do. That's why it's always really important to buy the type of paper that suits your style of painting, but also does what you want it to do when you start putting paint and paper together. So that was a yellow ochre. Let's pop in some, strong, into this wet into wet mixture. Let's just pop in some of this cobalt blue. We'll just move it around a little bit. I tend to paint at an angle, as you know, anywhere from 10 degrees all the way up to 45, but this is just for demonstration purposes, just to show you some of the properties that this watercolour paper can deliver. So I'm just going to move this around a bit. So it's doing what I want it to do. This is kind of like a cloud. I haven't got any source in front of me. I'm not looking at anything. I'm not copying anything, no picture or whatever. I'm just having an experiment. I think that's really important to get to know what papers and paints can do. So there we go. Got some 100 newer paper in there. I'll just use the angle of that under to help that run down this way. So you can see just the way that it's kind of, it's just the feel of it. It's hard to explain, but believe me, when you've painted on some awful cheap watercolour papers, you'll understand the difference. Anyway, let's just pop in a pretend horizon there. Just bring that down a little bit. That's probably just about it. Again, that was the yellow ochre. Let's pop in some of this burnt umber into there. Just let that blend and bleed away. Just show you how that's working there. Look, as I say, it's just experimentations. This is going to be sort of like a distant sort of tree line that I want to be putting in there. So you can see in these sort of white gaps is where I'm going to pop in some trees. And I want this to be even darker, so I'm just going to drop in some pigment into there. This is ultramarine blue. Let's just see what happens when I pop this in. It's kind of gone a bit grey because of the mixture we had in before, and a touch of neutral tint, which will definitely darken that upper touch. It's quite like the way this is filtering through, as if it's a rainy kind of rainy cloudy day. Here's quite nice, but we'll just design up here, pop in. It's quite blue there, isn't it? Let it do its own thing really in many ways. Neutral tint on its own can be used, of course, but mixed in with other colours is really quite potent. Quite nice in wet into wet or wet on wet as we're playing in here, to see how that works. across the length, these full pans are St. Petersburg White Knight paints, and along the top here, the other ones that I'm using today, we have Winsor & Newton Cotman paints in there. So it's quite nice the way that's bleeding back up. I like that effect. Let's just give it some gravity, see what happens. Put it back down again. See what happens again. Now, because I know this paper really well and I've painted hundreds and hundreds of paintings with it, I'm confident I know the results it's going to produce. So I want to share those kind of properties, if you like, of this paint, and why paper rather, and why I would recommend it. So let's just pop in, just dot in some and let it do its own thing there. I'll take out some of these edges. I don't want them all. Just soften this, just clear water. Just soften in there. Put some clear water in here to soften off here as well. Make it quite a misty kind of feeling around the edge. Just clear water. There we go. A touch of clear water in here as well, just to soften off. This is obviously bleeding back up. And you've got old-fashioned days of early 20th century painters, back in the golden day in the 1900s and so on. The way the paint moves and bleeds back in, called blooms, and it was something seen as an absolute disaster if this happened. I find that quite odd. I think they're absolutely beautiful when things bloom, especially if you want them to bloom in that way. I mean, just look at the way this granulate in here. It's gorgeous. And that's what I'm looking for, and that's what you'll get when you're painting wet into wet with this glorious Saunders Waterford paper. This is not so much a product review as really an endorsement, I guess, of this paper. Now then, I'm just going to touch in. I should let this dry really, but he who dares wins. He who wins dares. I'm just going to leave some edges there, and we're going to pop in a kind of grey mixture. It's cobalt blue. Probably kind of warm it up with a bit of alizarin crimson, or alizarin crimson, whichever way you want it. Alizarin, whichever way you want to pronounce it. Cobalt, alizarin, touch of neutral tint. Oh, that's too strong. And some yellow ochre will help grey that out. It's kind of gone a browny grey. It's probably not really what I wanted, so. And we'll go light to start with. We'll just try and keep away from some of those edges at the top. Yeah, I don't like that there. I'm just going to sort that out by popping in some ultramarine. That'll do the trick. There we go. The White Knight paints are actually highly pigmented in many cases. The ultramarine is absolutely glorious and very powerful, so you have to be quite sparing with it, unless of course you want a different kind of effect. Yeah, okay. This is kind of bled down. I didn't want that to happen, but I can sort that out. It never worries me. when things bleed along, just take some clear water, run it across, and turn it up the other way, slightly. You can always take a tissue to that as well and dab that out. Tissue, bless you, tissue is very useful. Can bring in highlights and all kinds of things and just soften off edges. Also dries the paper out quite nicely and stops it from, bleeding away where you probably don't want it. This is still, that should have been clear water. There you go. Let's just move that paint around again. That's good. Now then, let's just drop in, I love fingers, let's just drop in some of this colour with a few spatters. It doesn't really matter where it goes, it's going to be fine. I mean, if I was being precious about it, I could cover up here if I just want it to go in to the foreground, and then any of those other spatters are going to hit the paper. Let's get some of this umber in there. There we go, that'll do. My fingers in here now. Beautiful. We've got some dry brush, but it's dry finger, isn't it? I'm just whipping it. You've seen me do this with a brush before. It's quite a well-known technique to be able to just come in with a brush and whip it across, but we're just an experiment and having fun. It's not going anywhere, this painting, it's just an experimentation. So, gonna get near to the close of this one. I'm just gonna bring in some a warmer kind of tree type green in here, just to suggest. I'll mix that up a little bit. Mix that up, I'm mixing it so it's not all the same. I'm varying it, that's the word I was looking for. Not mixing it, varying it. That's the first kind of wash in there. And then I'll just add some of this cobalt to it and just drop that in places and just let it do its own thing. Always a good idea in wet into wet. And then we'll just line this off just there, just to create more of an effect of a horizon. As it all bleeds around, you can sort of spot places that you want it to stop, really, doing what it's doing. It's coming on quite nicely. Try to keep this under 15 minutes. And it's probably coming in a bit darker here. Whoa, that was into that mixture that we had. This is going to be powerful when I pop this in. I won't pop it in everywhere. We'll say the focal point is over this side somewhere. Just for balance, we'll just pop a few dots over here, but we don't want this to dominate. And let that run a piece. That'll do. There we go. Thanks a lot, and remember to subscribe, to like, and to come back soon for more watercolour content. This has been Saunders Waterford paper, just some experimentation, some beautiful, beautiful effects coming in here, the way that's sort of granulating, and a wet into wet demonstration with some dry brush strokes. Thanks a lot. Bye. Take care. Just dragged in there to finish off with my finger.